Most people would agree that 2020 was a very difficult year. Obviously, because of all the life changes brought about by the COVID pandemic. But for many people, myself included, we were also burdened by the many stories that we heard throughout the year about brutality and violence against Black people, with the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. But seeing the killing of George Floyd in May, that was absolutely horrifying. When I heard him cry out for his mama, that just gripped my heart. I broke down in tears because I was fearful for my own Black teenage sons, for my husband. I just felt helpless, like there's nothing I can do to protect them. In my sorrow, I turned to God in prayer, first on my own, but then I was actually also able to help organize a corporate prayer event here at the church over the summer called One in Prayer. We came together as a body to pray for healing in unity and just for God's direction in this dark time. And that was a really meaningful first step, but I was still in pain and I was longing for more. So I was really pleased to see that the women's ministry here at Fellowship was offering a book study in the fall around racial reconciliation in the church based on the book Weep With Me. The goal of the book was to give the church a language to embrace discussions around racial reconciliation using lament prayers. Because as a biracial Black woman who has lived and worshiped in predominantly white spaces my entire life, I would say that it's very difficult to have honest dialogue with people who are different than me about racial injustice and racism. In fact, it can be downright terrifying at times. So the idea of embracing a biblical framework to have this very important discussion really appealed to me. I learned that lament is the language God's people used when they faced sorrow and injustice. It's how they expressed their anguish over brokenness in the world. It's how they wept together. What most impacted me was the author's plea to Black Christians who attend predominantly white churches to lovingly express what he called our sense of exile as a way of helping others understand our experiences with racism. So I took that plea to heart and I wrote a lament prayer about some of the very painful experiences I had in my youth growing up in a predominantly white community, a lot of which happened in my church. I actually was able to meet with the women in my small group at church outdoors for a lament gathering. And many of us shared our lament prayers. I shared mine. We all shared our individual stories around racism and how we were feeling about the current events. We listened to one another. We comforted each other. At moments, we wept together. We really put into practice the directive given to believers to weep with those who weep and to bear one another's burdens. I can honestly say that through that experience, I experienced healing. Many of us, even though the study is over, have remained in contact. We have plans this year to do service projects together and just participate in activities and different ways that we can continue learning and growing together and remain in fellowship to support one another. Because of that, I can honestly say that even though the threat of racism is still very real and I still feel burdened in my heart when I see it at play in the world around me, I no longer feel the fear and the helplessness that I felt initially last year. Our hope is that we can just build deeper, richer relationships and help one another have more empathy for those that are in pain. Jesus came to break down the dividing walls and the walls of hostility between his people. He wants us to be one, and we need to reflect that to a hurting world.